What if a simple, seemingly ordinary moment in your baby's life could unlock a mystery so mind-blowing that it would change everything you thought you knew about your family's genetics? Picture this: you're cradling your newborn in your arms, watching their tiny hands grasp yours, and you notice something that makes your heart skip a beat. You're feeling the soft little gums, and then, suddenly, you see it, a tooth. Yes, a tiny, sharp tooth, making its grand debut way earlier than you ever expected. But this isn't just any tooth. This is the beginning of something far bigger, something that will unravel secrets in your family's genetic history that no one ever saw coming. Could this tiny milestone be the first clue to understanding something much deeper than you've ever imagined? Keep watching, because what happens next will completely change the way you think about your family's heritage, your health, and your future. Now, I want you to take a second and imagine something. What if your baby's first tooth wasn't just a simple sign of growth, but a key, yes, a key that could unlock a genetic revelation, one that not only connects you to your past but also shapes your future? This might sound a bit crazy, but trust me when I tell you that sometimes the smallest things can reveal the biggest truths. You see, this isn't just about a baby growing up. No, this is about a startling genetic discovery that, when unraveled, will make you question everything you thought you knew about your family's story. What if your child's first tooth isn't a coincidence? What if it's the start of a deeper mystery, one that will change how you look at your entire family's history? You need to keep watching to get the answers, because this story, it's not going to be what you expect. I can feel you're curious now. You're probably sitting there, wondering what's really going on, right? Maybe you're even a little skeptical, thinking, how can something as simple as a baby's first tooth be part of a genetic revelation? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to reveal today. As we go through this story, you'll discover something that I guarantee you didn't see coming. It's a journey that will make you think, is this really happening? But I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll be staring at your own family's history in a whole new light. I know, you're probably wondering, what's the big deal about a baby's first tooth? It's just a normal part of growing up, right? And maybe you're thinking, there's no way this leads to anything life-changing. Well, this is where I'm going to challenge you. What if the tooth wasn't just part of your baby's growth? What if it was the beginning of something so monumental that it could not only change the way you look at your family's genetics but could even alter how you view your own health and future? I know this sounds wild, but trust me, this is no ordinary tale. We're about to dive deep into the kind of family secret that's been hidden for generations, and it all started with that tiny little tooth. I can already imagine what's going through your head right now. Why does a baby's tooth even matter? It's a good question. I get it. But let me ask you this, have you ever wondered about the things you don't know about your family? The secrets that might be tucked away, hidden in your DNA, passed down through generations? Well, just wait. This little tooth. It might just be the start of a journey that uncovers a story you've never heard before. One that will change how you see your family's genetic history forever. So, stick with me, I promise, it's going to get fascinating. And it's not just a story about a tooth. No, it's much more than that. You know, it's strange how the smallest details often end up having the biggest impact. Imagine having your entire life shaped by something you never saw coming. Your entire family, unknowingly connected by a thread of genetic history, a thread that no one even knew existed until now. As we uncover this revelation, you'll see that sometimes, the most profound changes in our lives begin with a moment so small, so insignificant, that it could easily slip by unnoticed. But not this time. We're going to uncover something that's been there all along, right under our noses, hiding in plain sight. And it's about to blow your mind. So here's what's going to happen in the next few minutes. You're going to be taken on a ride that feels almost like a mystery unraveling in real time. You're going to hear about how a baby's tooth led to the discovery of a genetic condition that had been passed down through generations, something no one knew about, something that might just explain a lot of things about your family's health and genetic makeup. You're going to feel like you're watching something straight out of a science fiction movie, but I promise you, this is real life, and this is happening right now. You might be wondering how this all ties back to your family. Maybe you're thinking, what does this have to do with me? Well, the answer is simple. Everything. Because the chances are, You might be walking around with hidden genetic markers that have been passed down in your family for generations. And just like that, it takes something as simple as a baby's first tooth to bring it all to light. This is where it gets really interesting. As we piece together the story, you'll begin to realize that what's happening here is much bigger than just one family. It's about genetics, legacy, and the incredible way we're all connected, whether we know it or not. But don't take my word for it yet, keep watching. There's a twist in this story, a revelation that I can't wait to share with you. You'll be left asking yourself, why didn't I see this coming? Just when you think you've got it all figured out, something will happen that will have you questioning everything. This is not just another heartwarming baby story. This is a genetic journey, a mystery that will make you look at your own family, your own health, and your own future in a completely new way. And the best part? You won't have to wait long to get the answers. Everything starts with that one little tooth. But trust me, you're not going to believe where it leads. So, grab a seat, stay with me, and let's dive into this incredible story together. You won't want to miss what happens next. What's the real story behind your family's genetic history? And how does that tiny little tooth play into the biggest revelation of all? Let's find out. The story really starts to unfold when we look at the main character, Emma, a young mother who, like most new parents, was focused on the everyday moments, the smiles, the milestones, the little victories. Her days were filled with the usual routines, feeding her newborn, making sure everything was just right, and watching her baby's development with awe. But as every new parent knows, these moments, while beautiful, can also be overwhelming. And that's exactly where Emma found herself, juggling the joy of being a new mom with the fatigue of sleepless nights and endless care. Yet, in the midst of her regular whirlwind, something changed. Something unexpected, something strange, and something that would forever alter the course of her family's story. It started with a visit to her pediatrician. Just a routine checkup, or so she thought. Little did she know, that visit would send her down a path that no one could have predicted. As the doctor examined her baby's gums, something caught his attention. It wasn't the usual progression of baby teeth. What secrets were hidden deep within? You won't believe what came next. Stay with me, because we're just getting started. Emily sat back in her chair, staring at the glowing screen in front of her. The passport application process should have been straightforward. A few clicks, some personal details, a digital photo, and then the confirmation email. That was all she expected. But instead, a strange feeling crept up her spine when the page suddenly froze. She clicked again, but nothing happened. And then it flashed, a red warning sign on the screen, something about discrepancies in her data. Confused, she ran her finger over the mouse, trying to get the page to refresh. It wasn't until she saw the words pending verification that the hairs on her neck stood up. She hadn't done anything wrong. She had all the documentation, all the necessary information. Yet, this simple application for a passport, a document every American could get with ease, had suddenly turned into a game of waiting, uncertainty, and now, suspicion. The next day, Emily received a phone call. It was the government agency handling passport applications. At first, she thought it was just another follow-up, something routine. But when the voice on the other end of the line introduced themselves as a senior officer, her heart skipped a beat. They had questions, she was told. Questions about her identity. Questions about her records. But the strange part? They didn't elaborate on what these discrepancies were. They only said they needed to investigate further, and that could take days, maybe even weeks. It didn't sit right with her. She'd applied for this passport because she planned a trip to Europe, an escape after a particularly difficult year. A break to clear her mind, away from the chaos of her personal life. But now, everything felt off. Was she being targeted? Had she done something wrong without even knowing it? Emily had always thought of herself as an average woman, with a decent job and a modest apartment. Her life wasn't extraordinary by any means, but it was hers, and she had built it from the ground up. There was nothing particularly unusual about her background either. She came from a small town in Texas, and her family had roots there for generations. Or so she thought. Growing up, her parents had always emphasized the importance of knowing where you come from, of respecting your heritage. They often spoke fondly of their own parents and their shared history, a history that was woven deeply into the fabric of the community. But lately, Emily had begun to notice little inconsistencies in the stories her parents told her. Her mom would sometimes forget dates or mix up names. Her dad, usually so firm and confident, seemed distant when asked about their past. It was subtle at first, nothing that would make her question anything. But now, as she faced this mysterious issue with her passport application, she couldn't help but wonder, was there more to her family's story than she had been told? She thought about it for days. Emily had always been close to her parents, especially her mother. They'd always shared a deep connection, and her mom had been the one person she could rely on when life became too overwhelming. So, when Emily decided to confront her, it wasn't a light decision. She sat her mother down one evening, over dinner, and asked her directly about her family's history. At first, her mom seemed almost surprised by the question, as though she hadn't expected Emily to inquire about it now. But then, she hesitated. A long silence stretched between them, thick with something unspoken. Emily noticed the subtle shift in her mother's demeanor. Her hands suddenly fidgeted with the napkin, and her gaze shifted away, as if trying to avoid eye contact. It was then that Emily realized something was wrong. Her mom had always been open about their past, or at least she'd seemed to be. Why was she so uncomfortable now? Her mother's response, though soft, didn't offer much clarity. You know, sweetie, families have a way of changing over time. People come and go, names get mixed up, it's not as important as you might think. It wasn't the answer Emily had expected. It wasn't even an answer at all. But that small, insignificant moment sparked something deep inside her. It was as if the ground beneath her was starting to shift. Was her mother hiding something? Was there something she wasn't telling her about their family's past? And if so, what could it be? But it wasn't just her family that was beginning to feel strange. Emily's relationships were starting to fray at the edges. Take her best friend, Sarah, for instance. They had been close since childhood, and Emily confided in her about everything, her job, her personal struggles, and yes, even her recent passport situation. Sarah had always been the one to reassure her, telling her everything would be fine. Yet, during their last conversation, there was an odd tension in the air. Sarah had grown quiet when Emily mentioned the strange discrepancies in her passport application. At first, Emily chalked it up to Sarah being busy with her own life, but when Sarah's responses became short and almost dismissive, something didn't sit right. It was as if Sarah knew more than she was letting on. But what? Emily didn't want to jump to conclusions, but there was a nagging feeling at the back of her mind. She'd always trusted Sarah, but now, she found herself questioning everything. Could it be possible that Sarah knew something about her background? Or perhaps someone else did? Maybe someone in her family, or even someone she hadn't thought of in years, had the answers she was desperately seeking. The possibility of betrayal, of hidden truths, became a shadow that followed her wherever she went. As her world slowly started to tilt, Emily found herself at the center of a web she couldn't quite untangle. As the days passed, Emily's anxiety grew. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, constantly fixating on the mystery of her identity. She turned to the internet for answers, Googling everything she could think of related to her passport application, her family's history, and even the possibility that someone might be targeting her specifically. But each time she thought she might be getting closer to an answer, she only found more questions. Could it be possible that someone had tampered with her records? Or was this all some strange coincidence? And then, as if the universe was mocking her, Emily received another phone call, this time from an unknown number. Her heart raced as she answered. The voice on the other end sounded professional, but there was something unsettling about the tone. The caller identified themselves as a government investigator, someone who had been reviewing her case. They informed her that there had been an issue with her family's records. Emily felt her stomach churn. What did that even mean? What could possibly be wrong with her family's records? The investigator then said something that made Emily's blood run cold. We've encountered a name, someone connected to your family, that appears to be associated with a much larger investigation. The line went silent. Emily's mind raced, trying to piece together what she had just heard. Who was this person? What was the investigation? And why was her family involved? Emily's head spun as she asked the investigator for more details, but the person on the other end was elusive, refusing to provide any further information. And just like that, the call ended. Emily sat frozen, staring at the phone in her hand. It felt as though she had just crossed some kind of line, a line she didn't fully understand yet, but one that had irrevocably changed everything. The questions continued to spiral in her mind. Was this all some elaborate mistake? Or was her family hiding something far darker than she could ever have imagined? Emily had no answers, but one thing was certain: whatever was happening to her, whatever was buried in her family's past, was not going to stay hidden for much longer. And the deeper she dug, the more she realized just how high the stakes had become. She was on the edge of a truth that would shake her to her core, and the only thing she could do was keep going, no matter where it led her. The following days were a blur for Emily. The phone call from the investigator kept replaying in her mind, over and over. The words "larger investigation" echoed in her head, a haunting phrase that refused to leave her thoughts. She couldn't help but feel as though the world around her was slowly unraveling, piece by piece. But it wasn't until she received another unexpected call that everything started to spiral even further. This time, it wasn't from a government official. It was from Sarah. "Emily, I need to talk to you," Sarah said, her voice low and urgent. There was something different in her tone, something Emily hadn't heard before. It wasn't the carefree, comforting voice of her best friend. It was shaky, filled with an anxiety that sent a chill through Emily's spine. "Is everything okay?" Emily asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite the nervousness clawing at her. "No. There's something I have to tell you," Sarah continued. "Something I should have told you earlier, but I didn't want to upset you. I didn't think it was important, but now I realize it is." Emily felt a cold sense of dread wash over her. She had no idea what Sarah was talking about, but whatever it was, it felt like another piece of this twisted puzzle she couldn't put down. "I don't know what's going on with you and this passport situation, but I've been getting strange messages too." Sarah hesitated, as if she wasn't sure how much to reveal. "A few days ago, I got a call. A number I didn't recognize, just like the one you told me about. They were asking about you, about your family. They didn't say much, but they mentioned your name, specifically yours, and they said something like you might not want to go digging any deeper." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. "Wait, what? You're saying you're getting calls from the same people?" Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. "I think we're both in danger, Em. I think someone is watching us. Or, maybe. I don't know, but they're definitely trying to warn us off. And it's not just calls. I've seen things, strange things, happening around you. I didn't want to believe it, but now I can't ignore it anymore. Someone is making sure we don't get any answers." Emily's head was spinning. This was far worse than she could have imagined. Sarah's revelation felt like a slap to the face, the last thing she ever expected to hear from her friend. The very same people who had contacted her now seemed to be involved with Sarah. It wasn't just a matter of government paperwork or misfiled records anymore. No, this was something far more sinister. Someone was actively trying to keep her from uncovering the truth, and the stakes were higher than ever. Trying to calm herself, Emily asked, "What exactly did they say to you? Can you remember any details? Any names?" Sarah paused for a long time, before answering with a tremor in her voice. "No names. Just a message. A warning. And they mentioned something about a place. A location, but they didn't give an address. Just said the lake house. It sounded so cryptic, like they were telling me I needed to stay away from it." "The lake house," Emily repeated, her mind racing. She'd heard that phrase before, somewhere in the back of her memory. It sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. What was its significance? Was it just a random location, or did it hold the key to everything she was trying to understand? "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, sensing Emily's unease. "You're not. I mean, they didn't say anything to you, did they? Anything more direct? About you or your family?" Emily sat in stunned silence for a moment. Was Sarah trying to help, or was she involved in this too? She didn't want to think that her best friend, the person she trusted most in the world, might be hiding something from her, but with every new piece of information, the more complicated everything became. "No," she replied slowly. "But I'm starting to wonder if we're both in over our heads. If they're watching us, Sarah, what does that mean for us? What if we're in danger?" Sarah's voice trembled. "I don't know. I honestly don't know. But I think we need to get to the bottom of this before it's too late." And just like that, Emily knew this wasn't just about her family anymore. This wasn't just some bizarre issue with her passport application. There was a much larger game at play, and she and Sarah were pawns caught in its web. They needed to find answers, and they needed to do it fast. The question was, what were they really looking for? What was this lake house, and why did it seem to be the key to unraveling this entire mess? But even as Emily tried to piece together what Sarah had said, something about her friend's behavior felt off. She'd been so adamant about protecting her, so why now was she telling Emily things that seemed like half-truths? Was Sarah hiding something too? The doubt in Emily's mind began to fester. She had to trust her, but in a situation like this, trust was a fragile thing. The deeper Emily delved into the mystery, the more she realized that anyone could be hiding secrets, even the people closest to her. With her mind racing, Emily began to look through old family records, searching for any clues that might link her to the lake house or the mysterious names Sarah had mentioned. As she sifted through the dusty folders, one document caught her eye, an old, crumpled letter that seemed out of place among the others. It had no return address and was stamped with an official-looking seal. As Emily opened it, her eyes scanned the words, and she froze. The letter was addressed to her father. It mentioned a family matter of great importance and included a reference to the estate near the lake house. Her heart skipped a beat. What could this be? Her father had never mentioned anything about an estate, let alone one near this place she was now hearing about. Her pulse quickened. Was this letter connected to the government investigation? Was her family involved in something far bigger than she had ever imagined? Before she could even process the implications of what she had just read, another shock hit her. Her phone rang. This time, the caller ID read unknown. Instantly, her anxiety shot up. Could it be them again? The same people who had been shadowing her every move? She answered with a trembling voice. "Ms. Evans," the voice on the other end said, calm yet chilling. "We see you've been digging. You'd be wise to stop. If you continue, things could get much worse than you can imagine. This is your final warning." The line went dead. The message was clear. Someone didn't want her, didn't want anyone uncovering the truth. It was no longer just about her identity. It was about a web of secrets, lies, and power that stretched far beyond anything Emily had ever imagined. With every new detail, the picture grew murkier. And now, with both Sarah and Emily in the crosshairs, she had no choice but to dig deeper, no matter the cost. The lake house. The mysterious letters. The threats. Emily was in too deep now, and she was more determined than ever to find out what happened to her family, and who was pulling the strings behind all of this. But as she would soon discover, sometimes the truth is more dangerous than the lies. And uncovering it may be the biggest mistake of her life. The tension in Emily's chest had been building steadily for days, but it wasn't until that evening, when she walked into her apartment after another long day of fruitless searching, that she truly understood the danger she was in. It wasn't just a gut feeling anymore. It was real, it was visceral, and it was inescapable. She had thought that maybe, just maybe, she was overreacting. She'd questioned whether all the mysterious phone calls, the cryptic threats, and the strange behavior from people she trusted were simply products of her overactive imagination, a stress response to the confusing mess her life had become. But the moment she stepped through the door, her worst fears materialized in front of her. Her apartment was exactly how she had left it, lights off, nothing out of place. But something wasn't right. The silence felt heavy, suffocating. And then, as she walked further into the living room, she noticed it. The window by the kitchen was wide open. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She was certain she had closed it when she left that morning. It wasn't the kind of thing she would forget. She always double-checked the locks, the windows, the doors. She didn't leave her apartment vulnerable. But now, as the cool evening breeze poured in, a creeping sense of unease started to claw at her. Someone had been in here. Someone had been watching her. She scanned the room, every corner of it suddenly suspicious, her heartbeat loud in her ears. The air felt too still, too silent, as though every part of the space was holding its breath. Was this some kind of warning? Was it just another game the people who'd been following her were playing? Or was something far worse happening right in front of her? With trembling hands, she moved towards the kitchen, where she noticed the faintest trace of something unusual on the countertop, a scrap of paper, folded neatly. Her stomach twisted. She picked it up, her fingers shaking as she unfolded it. The message was short, written in a bold, almost aggressive hand, "You're getting too close. Stop looking, or you'll regret it." Emily's mind raced as she read the words again. Who was behind this? Why was she being threatened like this? And most importantly, how did they get into her apartment? The more she thought about it, the more she realized just how little she actually knew about the people or the forces that were making her life a nightmare. The phone calls, the government investigator, the cryptic messages, all of it was part of something much bigger than she could have imagined. And now it had escalated to the point where they were in her personal space, threatening her in the one place she felt safe. But that wasn't all. As she stood there, still holding the note, she heard the faintest sound, footsteps outside her door. Slow, deliberate. Someone was out there. She froze, panic surging through her body like ice water flooding her veins. Was it them? Had they been watching her from the shadows? Without thinking, she rushed to the door, peeking through the peephole. Her heart slammed against her ribcage. It was too dark to make out any details, but there was definitely someone standing there, right outside her door. Was it the person who'd left the note? Or was it someone else, another player in this tangled web? Her mind screamed at her to do something, to call the police, to confront them, but every instinct told her to remain quiet, to stay hidden. She didn't know who she could trust anymore. The feeling of being watched, of being hunted, was overwhelming. She stepped back from the door, trying to steady her breath. Her mind raced, but there were too many questions and too few answers. She couldn't trust Sarah anymore. Not after the strange behavior from her friend, the secrets she was hiding, and the cryptic warnings she herself had received. Emily's gut told her something was off, that Sarah knew more than she had let on. Maybe Sarah was involved in this, maybe not, but Emily couldn't afford to take any chances now. The footsteps outside her door continued, soft but persistent. It was as though they were waiting for something. Waiting for her to make the next move. Her hand shook as she reached for her phone, considering calling for help, but then a thought hit her. What if this was all connected? What if calling the authorities only made her a bigger target? She didn't know who was on her side anymore, if anyone. And so, in that moment, fear gripped her heart. Suddenly, the sound of the footsteps stopped. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She stood frozen, her mind spinning, desperately trying to figure out what to do next. It felt like a game of cat and mouse, and she wasn't sure whether she was the cat or the mouse. She took a hesitant step back toward the kitchen, but as soon as she did, the door handle rattled. The sudden sound made her blood run cold. They were trying to get in. Instinctively, she bolted for her phone, but before she could dial, her screen flashed with an incoming call from an unknown number. Her heart skipped a beat. Who was this now? Was it someone from the government again? Or someone else, someone far more dangerous? With a trembling hand, she accepted the call, not knowing whether she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Emily, a voice on the other end whispered, low and menacing, sending a shiver down her spine. You should have listened. Now, you're about to learn what happens when you dig too deep. This is your last chance to stop. Walk away now, and maybe you'll still have a life. Keep going, and there won't be anything left for you. The line went dead before she could respond. The silence that followed was deafening. She stood frozen in her apartment, paralyzed by a fear so raw it felt like it was suffocating her. Every creak, every shift in the air around her made her jump, made her feel like she was trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. She had no idea who was on the other side of that call, but it was clear this was no longer a game. The stakes had been raised, and Emily was now squarely in the middle of something much darker than she could have ever imagined. What had started as a simple question about her identity, about her family's past, had transformed into a deadly game. And she didn't know the rules. The fear, the uncertainty, the growing paranoia were eating at her from the inside out. Every shadow, every strange noise, every person she crossed paths with now felt like a potential threat. It wasn't just her life at risk anymore. Everything she had known, everything she believed about her family, about her past, was being shattered. The walls were closing in on her, and the more she tried to dig, the more it seemed like the world was pushing back, trying to bury the truth. But Emily couldn't stop. She wouldn't stop. Not now. Something was driving her forward, and despite the terror clawing at her mind, she knew one thing for sure: she was going to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Even if it meant losing everything in the process. As the days passed, Emily's sense of dread only deepened. Every decision she made, every action she took, seemed to lead her further into a labyrinth of shadows, with no clear way out. The mystery of her passport application, the cryptic threats, and the strange calls had become the center of her existence. But even more unsettling was the gnawing suspicion that everything she thought she knew was just a mirage. She had started to suspect that there were layers to this situation that went beyond what was visible on the surface, that perhaps she wasn't the only one being manipulated. But it wasn't until she sat down with Sarah, finally ready to confront her friend about the mounting secrets, that the truth came crashing down in the most unexpected way. They met in a quiet cafe, tucked away from the prying eyes of the world. Emily had planned this meeting meticulously, rehearsing every word in her head. She needed answers, and Sarah was the only person left who might hold the key to unlocking the chaos that had consumed her life. Sarah arrived late, her eyes tired, her demeanor distant, nothing like the person she used to be. Emily felt a pang of regret, but she pushed it aside. This conversation had to happen. There was no other choice. "I've been thinking about everything," Emily began, trying to keep her voice steady, though her heart was racing. "Sarah, you're the only person who's been there for me through all of this. But I can't shake the feeling that there's more to this than we've been told. You know more than you're letting on. Why have you been so quiet about everything?" Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes flickering toward the door as if she were expecting someone or something. Emily watched her closely, the unease in Sarah's posture feeding into her growing suspicion. There was something off. But what? Sarah hesitated. The words didn't come easily. She looked at the table between them, as if avoiding Emily's gaze. "There's something I've been keeping from you, something I didn't want to burden you with. I didn't think it mattered, not until now." Emily leaned forward, her pulse quickening. This was it. The moment she'd been waiting for. "What do you mean?" Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What aren't you telling me, Sarah?" For a long moment, Sarah was silent, her hands trembling as she finally met Emily's eyes. "You remember when I told you I got a call about you? The one about your family?" Emily nodded, urging her to continue. "That wasn't all of it. They didn't just ask about you. They asked about me too. They knew things about me, things I didn't even know myself. And they warned me. They told me that if I didn't keep you away from the investigation, things would get worse for both of us. But it wasn't just that, Em. It was something else. They said I was involved in all of this. And I didn't understand. I didn't know what they meant." Emily felt her stomach churn. "Involved? What are you talking about? How could you possibly be involved in all of this? I thought we were on the same side." Sarah took a deep breath, her face pale as she looked down at her hands, not able to meet Emily's gaze any longer. "I never wanted to tell you this, but I've been working for them. For the people who are behind all of this." Emily's world seemed to tilt on its axis, the words hanging in the air like a heavy fog. She had to have misheard her. "What? What do you mean, you've been working for them? Who are they, Sarah? What the hell is going on?" "I didn't know it at first," Sarah continued, her voice barely audible now, full of regret. "I was recruited a long time ago, before you and I even met. At first, I thought it was some kind of government project, some intelligence thing. They promised they were protecting people, keeping families safe. But then they told me things, Emily. They told me that your family was connected to something much bigger than I ever realized. And it wasn't until I started getting closer to you that I started seeing pieces of the puzzle that didn't fit. That's when I realized what I was a part of. But it was too late. I was in too deep. They knew everything about me, everything about you. Emily's mind was reeling. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but she couldn't process what Sarah was saying. The very person she had trusted most, her best friend, the person she thought would never lie to her, had been a part of the web of deceit from the beginning. But why? What had Sarah been hiding all this time? I don't understand, Emily stammered. How could you be involved in this? How could you not have told me? I couldn't. Sarah's voice cracked, the words coming out in a rush. I didn't want to drag you into this, Em. I didn't want you to know. They told me to keep you away from the truth. But then you kept digging, and now everything's falling apart. You're getting too close, and they're going to come after both of us. I never wanted this for you. I swear, I didn't. But it was too late for apologies. Emily's world felt like it was crumbling before her eyes. Everything she thought she knew, everything she thought was real, was now in question. The investigation wasn't just about her passport. It wasn't just about uncovering her family's secrets. It was about something far more dangerous, something far more insidious. The people behind it all, they were always a step ahead. And now, Emily realized with a sickening clarity, she had been manipulated from the very beginning. What are they really after, Sarah? Emily demanded, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Why didn't you ever tell me the truth? Why didn't you warn me? What the hell is going on? Sarah shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. I didn't know how to tell you. But now I can't protect you anymore. They're going to come for you, Emily. They're going to come for us both. Suddenly, the cafe's door opened, and Emily's heart stopped. A man in a dark suit stood in the doorway, scanning the room. Emily's blood ran cold as his eyes briefly met hers before he turned and walked out, disappearing into the street. But in that fleeting moment, everything changed. Sarah's expression turned pale, her face drained of color. They found us, Sarah whispered, barely audible. They know you're here. The days following that confrontation in the cafe were nothing short of a nightmare. Emily's life had gone from a tangled web of unanswered questions to a full-blown horror show. The air around her felt heavy, suffocating, as though she was walking on the edge of something far more dangerous than she had ever realized. The more she tried to piece the puzzle together, the more the pieces seemed to slip out of her grasp, and with each new discovery, the stakes climbed higher. Sarah's confession had turned everything she thought she knew upside down, and now, Emily was faced with a terrifying reality. Nothing was what it seemed, and everyone she had trusted was either part of the game or too terrified to help her. As the days blurred into one another, Emily's paranoia grew. The man in the dark suit from the cafe, she hadn't been able to shake the image of him, his cold eyes scanning the room, as if he knew exactly who she was. She had seen him again, once outside her apartment, and once more near the coffee shop where she always met Sarah. Someone was watching her. Someone was always watching her. The thought kept her awake at night, the shadows in her apartment feeling less like the usual quiet solitude and more like a trap, a cage closing in around her. The walls were closing in, and she knew there was only one way to get out, confront the truth, no matter the cost. But there was another truth she had been avoiding. As much as Emily tried to focus on the external forces that were hunting her, she couldn't ignore the internal conflict anymore. It was Sarah, who had once been her closest friend, her confidant, who had now revealed herself as a key player in this twisted game. Emily's mind kept circling back to that final look Sarah had given her, the one filled with fear and regret. Could she still trust Sarah? Could she really believe that her friend had been as helpless as she claimed? Or had Sarah been playing her all along? Was the woman she had leaned on for support just another pawn in a much larger, much darker plan? Emily had been fighting to uncover the truth about her past, about her family's involvement, but now, she was left questioning whether Sarah had been part of the lie all along. That question ate at her every waking moment, gnawing at the edges of her sanity, until she couldn't take it anymore. It had to end. She had to confront Sarah, face to face, and demand the truth, all of it. But what if confronting Sarah meant losing the last person she could hold on to in this mess? What if Sarah's involvement was deeper than she thought, and that truth came with its own set of dangerous consequences? The fear of losing her friend, the fear of learning something she might never be able to unlearn, paralyzed her. The breaking point came one late afternoon when Emily received a call. Unknown number. She'd stopped answering those calls long ago, but something in her gut told her to pick up this time. She almost regretted it immediately. A cold, unfamiliar voice greeted her, its tone flat and emotionless. "Emily," the voice said, and her skin prickled with dread. "We know you're getting too close. This is your final warning. The truth you seek will come at a cost, and you're running out of time. We've been patient with you, but now you need to make a choice. You either stop your search and walk away from this investigation, or you continue, and you lose everything you've ever cared about. We're not asking anymore. We're telling you. The consequences will be irreversible." Emily's breath hitched. She wasn't just being warned, she was being threatened. But something was different about this message. It felt more personal. More deliberate. The way the voice had emphasized everything you've ever cared about made her feel like it wasn't just a threat against her. It was a threat against everyone. And that's when the realization hit her. They weren't just after the truth, they were after her life. Her family's life. Sarah's life. Anyone who might stand in their way. It was no longer just about uncovering secrets, it was about survival. And then the phone went dead, leaving Emily in a stunned silence. She stared at her phone screen, her mind spinning. What was she supposed to do? She couldn't just stop now. She couldn't turn her back on everything she'd discovered, not when she was so close to understanding it all. But if she kept going, if she pushed any further, she might lose the only people she had left, the people she cared about. She felt like a pawn in someone else's game, and every move she made seemed to cost her something precious. Her phone vibrated again, breaking her from her spiraling thoughts. It was a message from Sarah, one she hadn't expected. "We need to talk. Now." The urgency in Sarah's message felt like a punch to her gut. Emily had never seen her friend so desperate, so afraid. What was happening? She had to see her, had to know if Sarah was still on her side, or if she was part of the danger closing in on her. And yet, as Emily thought about it more, the weight of what this meeting might mean sank deeper. What if Sarah had already made a choice? What if her friend had already decided where her loyalties lay, and now Emily was going to pay the price for it? By the time Emily arrived at the park where they were supposed to meet, her stomach was in knots. The evening light filtered through the trees, casting long shadows on the ground, and the air felt thick, like something was about to break. Sarah was already there, standing by a bench, her back to Emily, her shoulders tense. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, every instinct screaming at her to run, to get as far away as possible. But she couldn't. She had to know the truth. She had to confront her. "Sarah," Emily called, her voice thick with emotion. Sarah turned slowly, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She had been crying, or at least that's what it looked like. But as Emily looked closer, she saw something in her friend's expression that made her blood run cold. Fear. Pure, unrelenting fear. "I can't protect you anymore, Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. I thought I could, but I can't. I made a deal with them. And now, they want more than just information. They want everything." Emily's mind went blank for a moment, the words not registering at first. "What do you mean? What deal? Who are they, Sarah? Who are you working with?" Sarah took a step back, her eyes darting around nervously, as if checking to see if they were being watched. "They know about everything. About you, about me, about your family. And now they're threatening to expose everything we've been hiding, everything you've been hiding, They're giving us a choice. A final choice. We either join them, we become part of the system, work for them, or we end up as casualties of this whole thing. It's that simple. They've already shown they'll do whatever it takes to get what they want. And if we don't fall in line, if you don't fall in line, they'll destroy us both." Emily's head spun. Her heart raced, each beat louder than the next. Was Sarah really telling her to join the enemy? To give in to the same forces that had torn her life apart? Emily felt like she was drowning in the weight of the decision being thrust upon her. Was there a way out? Or was this just the price of uncovering the truth? The choice was impossible. Emily's world, which had once been defined by right and wrong, by truth and lies, now felt murky, dark. The path forward had never seemed less clear. Would she give in to the threat, save herself and Sarah, and lose everything she had fought for? The weight of Emily's decision pressed on her chest like an iron fist, suffocating every breath. She could feel it now, more clearly than ever. The game she had been dragged into was bigger than just her. Bigger than the questions surrounding her family. It was something darker, something insidious, woven into the very fabric of the systems she had once trusted. And as she stood there, facing Sarah, the realization that there was no way out, no easy answer, crashed down on her like a wave. The people pulling the strings weren't just after her. They weren't just after Sarah. They were after everything. Sarah's eyes were wide, filled with desperation, but Emily couldn't bring herself to trust her anymore. That small flicker of doubt, the sense that something wasn't right, gnawed at her. It was all too perfect, too rehearsed. The sudden urgency. The threats. The betrayal. Emily had felt it for days now, something subtle in the way people acted, in the way they avoided her eyes, as though they all knew more than they were letting on. And now, standing here in this park, facing the person who had been her closest ally, Emily understood one thing with brutal clarity: this wasn't just about her. It was about everyone. Sarah, what are you not telling me? Emily's voice shook, the calmness betraying the storm building within her. Sarah flinched, clearly uncomfortable, but her hesitation only made Emily's heart pound harder. She had to know the truth. Please, Em, you don't understand. Sarah's voice cracked, and her hands shook as she stepped forward, her face a mask of agony. I never wanted this for you. But it's too big. You have no idea how deep this goes. No idea what you're up against. She took a deep breath, as though steeling herself. There's more, Em. There's more to you than you realize. More than your family's history, more than the passport or the secrets. Emily's stomach twisted. What do you mean? What are you talking about? Sarah's gaze darted around, and then her eyes met Emily's with a look that could only be described as a confession, guilt, terror, and regret all bundled into one. They've been watching you since you were born. Your whole life has been a setup. A plan. The moment you got that passport application, the moment you started asking questions, you triggered something. They've been pulling strings behind the scenes, manipulating you, manipulating your every move. Emily felt the blood drain from her face. What? Who's been doing this? I don't know, Sarah admitted, looking away as though the weight of her own words was too much to bear. But I've seen the files, Em. The ones they've been keeping. They're not just interested in you. They've been watching everyone, every person who could have a piece of the puzzle. You're not the only one in this mess. You've never been the only one. Emily's heart raced, her thoughts scattering like leaves in the wind. The pieces of the puzzle she had been desperately trying to put together were slipping out of her hands, faster and faster. Her mind raced back to everything she had learned, her family's connection to something bigger, the strange phone calls, the ominous threats. Could it be that everyone she trusted had been part of this twisted web? Was Sarah really as innocent as she had appeared? Before Emily could respond, a distant sound, a car door slamming, shattered the moment. Sarah froze, her face paling in an instant. Emily looked up to see two black cars pulling up to the park entrance, their tinted windows reflecting the fading sunlight. Fear washed over Emily in waves, her breath catching in her throat. She didn't need Sarah to tell her who was inside. She knew. The moment she saw the cars, everything clicked into place. They found us, Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. Everything moved in a blur after that. The doors of the cars opened, and three figures emerged, tall and imposing. The first man, the same one she had seen before, in the cafe and near her apartment, stepped forward. His eyes were cold, calculating. He was a part of this, just like everyone else. But now, as he approached them, Emily felt a sudden, horrific clarity. This wasn't just about secrets anymore. This wasn't just about family histories and dark conspiracies, it was about control. Control over everything. The man in the suit stopped a few feet away from them, his gaze sweeping over Sarah and then locking onto Emily's eyes with unsettling precision. "You've made this more difficult than it had to be," he said, his voice smooth, almost casual, as if they were discussing the weather. "But now, we have no choice. You've crossed the line, Emily. And you'll need to come with us." Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But she couldn't run, not now. Not when she had come so close to the truth. Not when she was so close to understanding the full scope of the conspiracy that had been carefully constructed around her life. But the chilling reality set in. This wasn't just a game. It was a war. And the moment she had started digging, she had unwittingly become a pawn in that war, a war she couldn't win. Not alone. "Who are you?" Emily demanded, trying to keep her voice steady, though every fiber of her being screamed in panic. "Why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" The man's lips twitched into something resembling a smile, though it held no warmth, only malice. "What we want, Emily, is simple. Control. Power. Information. And you're the key to it all. Your family's connections, your bloodline, your passport application, it's all been leading to this. It's bigger than anything you could ever understand." He paused, his gaze shifting to Sarah, then back to Emily. "Your friend here doesn't have all the answers, but we know she's been useful. She's done what we asked. Now, we need you to do your part." Emily's mind spun. Her thoughts were racing as the weight of his words crushed down on her. Her family's connections. Her bloodline. What was he talking about? And what part was she supposed to play in this nightmare? "You really have no idea how deep this goes, do you?" the man continued, his voice taking on an almost pitying tone. "You've been asking the wrong questions, Emily. But now, it's time for you to stop playing at being the hero. You don't get to uncover the truth. Not unless we allow it." Fear tightened its grip on her chest, but beneath it, something else stirred. Rage. Fury. She had been lied to, manipulated, and used as a pawn in someone else's game for too long. Now, they were threatening her very life, and still she had no answers. Her entire world was crumbling, but one thing was clear, the stakes had never been higher. This wasn't just about uncovering a few family secrets anymore. This was about survival. Before she could even think about what to do next, Sarah stepped forward, her face drawn with fear and shame. Please, don't do this. Don't fight them. They'll." But she was cut off when a sharp, cold voice sliced through the air. "Enough." The man in the suit raised his hand, signaling Sarah to stop. "Emily, we're giving you one last chance. One last chance to join us before things get ugly. You will cooperate, or we'll make sure you regret it." The pressure was unbearable. Emily felt her world narrowing down to a single, terrifying truth. There was no escaping this now. She had been drawn into something far darker than she could have ever imagined, and now, the only way out was to make a choice, their choice. But was there a way out? Or was she already trapped in a web that was too tangled to escape? The world around Emily felt like it was closing in on her, the walls pressing in tighter with every breath she took. The man in the suit was still standing there, calm, unfazed by her fear, as if the power to control her life had already been decided. He wasn't just some faceless enemy, he was the embodiment of everything she had been chasing, the person behind the curtain, the mastermind pulling all the strings. Her heart was pounding in her chest as she stood frozen, trapped in the moment between escape and submission. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to flee the park, to find safety before it was too late. But it was already too late. She had crossed a line, and now, there was no turning back. "You don't understand, Emily," the man in the suit said again, his voice cold and devoid of emotion, like he was delivering some final, inevitable truth. "You never did. This isn't about your family's secrets or your passport. It's about something bigger than you, bigger than any of us. The world isn't just divided into the people who hold power and the ones who don't. It's about who controls the truth, who controls information. And your bloodline, your connection to this web of power, it's why you've been chosen." Emily's mind raced, her heart hammering in her chest as she tried to process the implications of his words. She had suspected it for so long, But hearing it from him, hearing the cold certainty in his voice, sent a chill through her entire body. This wasn't just about some shady government program, or even her family's buried history. It was about control, manipulation, and the ways in which the powerful could shape the world through secrets, lies, and access to the truth. And now, she was a part of it. She had been dragged into a game she didn't even know she was playing. Why me? She finally found her voice, her words shaky but filled with defiance. What do you want from me? What is it that you need? The man smiled, but it was more of a cruel twist of his lips than an expression of anything resembling joy. You, Emily, are the key. The last piece of the puzzle. Your family's legacy is one of the oldest and most powerful in the world, a lineage that can shift the balance of power in ways you can't even begin to comprehend. But it's your connection to the passport, the one you've been investigating, that is the final element. The truth you uncover will allow us to control everything. Her blood ran cold. The passport. It wasn't just a simple piece of identification. It was the key to unlocking something far more dangerous, far more powerful than she had ever imagined. It was something the world's most influential people had fought to control for centuries. Emily was beginning to realize the full scope of the conspiracy, and it was enough to make her want to run far, far away from everything she knew. But there was nowhere to hide anymore. As he spoke, a deep, guttural voice interrupted him, Sarah's voice. No, Emily, don't listen to him. Emily turned toward her friend, who was standing near the edge of the park, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. Sarah was trembling, as if every word she was about to speak had the potential to destroy everything. It's true. Everything he said, but there's something you don't know. Something important. There's a piece of the puzzle you haven't found yet. Something that will change everything. Sarah's words cut through the tension like a blade, leaving Emily in a state of confusion and disbelief. What are you talking about? Emily demanded, her voice trembling with urgency. What piece? What have you been hiding from me? Sarah's gaze flickered nervously toward the man in the suit, then back to Emily. Her lips parted, as though she were about to say something earth-shattering, but before she could continue, a noise behind them made both of them freeze. The sound of tires screeching to a halt, loud, jarring, and sudden, echoed through the park. Emily whipped around, her heart sinking. 3 black SUVs slid into view, blocking the entrance. More men, wearing the same cold, professional suits, stepped out, their eyes scanning the area with military precision. The air thickened with the unmistakable presence of danger, and Emily's stomach twisted with the sickening feeling that things had just gone from bad to much worse. Now we have to make a decision, the man in the suit said coolly, unfazed by the sudden arrival of reinforcements. His voice dropped lower, almost as if he were speaking to himself, but loud enough for Emily to hear. Either you come with us, Emily, or we take everything from you. Everything around Emily seemed to blur, her thoughts spiraling out of control as she felt the weight of the situation crush down on her. Her family, her friends, everything was at risk. She had fought so hard for answers, but now, the truth was more terrifying than she could have ever imagined. There was no running now, no more time to think. She had been backed into a corner, and they knew it. But deep inside, something fierce and desperate flared up in her chest. She couldn't back down. Not now. Not after everything she had learned. She wasn't going to let them take away her life, her choices, her future. Take her, the man in the suit said coldly to his men, and they began advancing on her with purpose. But just as the first man lunged forward, Emily made her move. With a speed she didn't know she had, she spun around and grabbed the first thing she could find, a heavy, metal object from a nearby bench, and swung it with all her might at the man approaching her. He staggered back, shocked by the unexpected force, and in that split second, Emily turned and ran. Her heart was racing, her mind scrambling to find a way out of this nightmare. She didn't know where she was going, she didn't care, but all she knew was that she had to keep moving. The darkness of the park felt suffocating as she bolted between trees, her footsteps muffled by the thick, damp earth beneath her. She could hear shouts behind her, the sound of running footsteps growing closer, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Suddenly, a figure appeared ahead of her in the shadows. Emily skidded to a halt, panic rising in her chest as she saw the silhouette of someone she didn't expect. Sarah. Her friend's face was lit by the faint glow of the streetlights in the distance, and Emily's heart leaped at the sight. But something was wrong. Sarah was holding something, a gun. No. Emily cried out, backing away. Sarah, what are you doing? I'm sorry, Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of Emily's heart. I didn't have a choice. They've been controlling me, too. But it's the only way. I have to do this. Emily's breath hitched as the truth crashed down on her all at once. The betrayal. The manipulation. Sarah had been working for them the whole time. She was never the friend she thought she was. She was a tool, just like everyone else. And then, with a deafening crack, the world exploded in pain. The gunshot rang out through the park, sending a shockwave of panic through Emily's body. She didn't know if it was meant for her or someone else, but it didn't matter. As the world blurred around her and she staggered back, everything she thought she knew, every bit of trust she had, was shattered. The conspiracy, the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, it was all part of something far bigger than she could have imagined. And now, the battle was far from over. But in that instant, Emily realized one thing with terrifying clarity. No matter how much she ran, no matter how much she fought, they had already won. The truth was more elusive than she had ever thought, and she was just one small, insignificant piece of their grand design. The days that followed were a blur of quiet, creeping anxiety. Emily couldn't remember the last time she slept without the weight of fear sitting heavily on her chest. The world had shifted beneath her feet, and nothing about her life was the same anymore. The truth she had spent so long searching for, the family secrets, the passport, the strange threats, and the looming figures had all unraveled into something deeper, more complex, and ultimately more terrifying than she could have ever imagined. But there was no going back now. The pieces were in motion, and Emily found herself, in some strange way, standing at the center of it all. The gunshot that had echoed through the park, the betrayal from someone she had trusted, the face of Sarah, those images haunted her, every waking moment and every fleeting dream. Sarah was gone. After the chaos in the park, the truth finally came crashing down. She wasn't just a pawn, she had been a part of this twisted game, her own motivations tangled in a web of lies and manipulation. Emily had tried to understand, tried to make sense of it all. But in the end, the truth was too sharp, too painful to bear. Sarah had been a part of something bigger, something darker than Emily could have imagined, and though the betrayal hurt, there was a strange sense of peace in knowing the full picture. As the last of the shadows from that night faded away, Emily realized something crucial. The answers she had spent so long searching for had only opened new questions. The conspiracy was far from over, and the people behind it still held the reins. But now, she was no longer in the dark. She knew what they were capable of, and she understood, perhaps for the first time, the true cost of the power they held. It was over, or at least, that's what she tried to tell herself. She had finally left the city, the place that had once felt like home now reduced to a memory. She had started a new life in a small town on the edge of nowhere, a place where the past couldn't find her, or so she thought. For months, she lived in silence, trying to rebuild, trying to forget. She worked at a coffee shop, kept to herself, avoided anything that resembled the shadows she had left behind. But no matter how hard she tried to escape, the past kept knocking. One evening, as she was closing the cafe, a package arrived at her doorstep. No return address. No sender's name. Just her name, Emily. She hesitated. The package sat there, unopened, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the cool evening air making her skin prickle with unease. She had been expecting something like this, hadn't she? It was impossible to escape it. She tore open the envelope and pulled out the contents, a small, thin folder with the words "For Your Eyes" only scrawled across the front. Inside, there was a single photograph. It was a picture of her, Emily, taken from a distance. A snapshot of her standing outside her small-town cafe, the wind gently ruffling her hair, as if someone had been watching her the entire time. Beneath it was a note, written in the same cold, calculated script she had seen before: "You can't hide forever. The game is far from over. And you're not finished yet." The words sent a chill through her, colder than anything she had ever felt before. Emily's heart raced as she stared at the note. The game wasn't over. It never had been. The same shadowy figures that had controlled her life were still out there, and they knew exactly where she was. The passport, the family secrets, Sarah's betrayal, those pieces had all led to this moment, and now Emily knew there was no escaping it. But there was something else that lingered, something deeper than fear. She wasn't alone anymore. She had learned too much, fought too hard, and lost too much to back down now. The truth had set her free, but it had also trapped her in a new reality, one where she had no choice but to confront whatever came next. The last piece of the puzzle had always been hidden in plain sight. The people she had thought were her enemies, the ones who had torn apart her life, they were still lurking in the shadows. But Emily was different now. She wasn't the same person who had stepped into that bureaucratic office all those months ago, asking for a passport. She had seen the darkness, touched the edges of a conspiracy that reached into the very core of the systems she had trusted, and now she was ready to face whatever came her way. Her world had been shattered, but from the ruins, she would rebuild. This time, though, she would be the one pulling the strings. The game had changed, and Emily was no longer a pawn. She was a player. As she stared down at the photograph, her hand tightening around the edges of the paper, she made a decision. She wasn't going to run anymore. She wasn't going to let them control her life, her story. She had been a part of something bigger, yes, but now, she was going to be the one to write the next chapter. And in the silence of that small town, the final pieces clicked into place. The truth wasn't finished with her yet. But neither was Emily. The camera pulled back, leaving her standing alone on the front porch, staring into the distance as the last vestiges of daylight vanished behind the horizon. A new chapter was beginning, but who could say where it would lead? The ground seemed to shift beneath Emily's feet as the realization hit her all at once. This wasn't just about her family anymore. This wasn't just about a mysterious passport application. This was a game of power, manipulation, and control, and she had been a pawn in it all along. The more she tried to uncover the truth, the more she realized the people behind it all had been one step ahead from the very beginning. And just as Emily thought she might finally have a grasp on what was happening, the final twist hit her. It had all been planned. From the calls to the letters to the mysterious threats, it was all part of the same grand design. But who was pulling the strings? And what was the ultimate goal? Emily's mind raced, and as the shadows closed in around her, she knew this was just the beginning. Everything had just changed. And now, the true danger was just beginning to reveal itself.